The sound of shattering glass ripped through the early morning silence like a scream. Elena Vasquez jolted awake, heart pounding in her ears. It wasn't even 3 a.m., and someone had just smashed her car window. She crept to her second-floor apartment window, lifting the curtain just enough to see. The sight froze her. 3 hooded men circled her blue Honda Civic. One held a plastic bag that glimmered under the streetlight. No, Elena whispered as one of them pushed the bag inside through the broken window. She knew exactly what was happening. They were planting drugs, but why her? She was just a grocery store clerk living a quiet life, paying taxes, staying out of trouble. Then it hit her. The alley behind her store 3 nights ago. She had gone out to toss trash and spotted a suited man exchanging an envelope with a dealer. A quick handshake, knowing smiles, and cash. The man in the suit wasn't a stranger. He was a cop, Detective Miguel Herrera. She remembered his name from the times he came to her store, always flashing large bills and that smug smile as if nothing could touch him. Now, as the hooded men drove off in a truck with no plates, Elena knew her life had just been thrown into a nightmare. 6 hours later, sirens shattered the neighborhood's calm. 4 patrol cars surrounded her Civic, lights flashing. Officers pointed their guns at her. Hands up. Step away from the vehicle. Neighbors gathered, some filming, others staring with morbid fascination. "It's my car. I'm Elena Vasquez," she cried, raising trembling hands. The concrete tore at her knees as she was forced down. The cuffs snapped shut with a metallic finality. "Elena Vasquez, you're under arrest for possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute," a familiar voice announced. She looked up. Detective Herrera stood there holding an evidence bag filled with bricks of cocaine. His smile was cold, deliberate. "We found this in your vehicle, Miss Vasquez. Quite a lot for personal use, don't you think?" Her voice shook. "You know I didn't put that there." Herrera's smile widened. "Are you accusing me of planting evidence?" "That's a dangerous claim." "I saw you," Elena whispered, "in the alley. 3 nights ago." For a split second his mask cracked. His eyes hardened. He leaned close and murmured, "I don't know what you think you saw, but people who make up stories about police officers usually end up with bigger problems than they can handle." At the station, Elena sat in a cold interrogation room for hours without food, water, or a phone call. When the door finally opened, Herrera walked in with another detective. "Well, Miss Vasquez," Herrera said, tossing a folder onto the metal table, "you have a spotless record, not even a traffic ticket, which makes me wonder why someone like you would get into the drug business. I didn't. You know those drugs aren't mine." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "Look, Elena, if you cooperate, things will go easier. Give us names, suppliers, clients, help us, and we'll help you." Her chest burned with anger. "I don't have names. This is a setup and you know it." Herrera gave a low laugh. "A setup? Who would waste time framing a grocery store clerk?" The implication was clear. She was nobody. Nobody who would ever be believed. "I want a lawyer," she finally said. "Of course," Herrera replied smoothly, "but take it from me. Public defenders are drowning in cases, and with the evidence we've got, you're going to need a miracle." 3 days later, she sat in the cramped office of James Patterson, her exhausted public defender. Papers and files were stacked everywhere, cold coffee stinking up the air. "Elena," Patterson said without looking up, "your situation is bad. Very bad. The police report says Herrera got an anonymous tip, saw suspects near your car, and found 3 kilos of cocaine under your seat." "That's a lie," she snapped. "Let me finish," Patterson sighed. 2 witnesses claim they saw you dealing. Maria Santos and Roberto Jimenez, both your neighbors." Elena's stomach dropped. Maria, the sweet old lady down the street. Roberto, the store owner she saw daily. Why would they lie? People lie for money, fear, or to avoid police trouble. Patterson said tiredly, "Your best option may be to plead guilty to a lesser charge. Probation, maybe community service." Elena shot up from her chair. "I will not admit to something I didn't do." "If this goes to trial," Patterson warned, "you're facing 10 to 20 years. Are you ready to gamble on a jury believing you over a decorated detective and 2 witnesses?" Her throat tightened. "Can't we investigate Herrera or the witnesses?" Patterson shook his head. "We don't have the resources. I've got over 200 cases. I'm sorry." That night in her cell, Elena met Carmen, a hardened inmate who had seen it all. Carmen listened to Elena's story in silence. "A cop, huh?" Carmen muttered. "That's dangerous. But if what you saw is real, you might have more power than you think." I only saw him take money from a dealer, Elena said quietly. Dealer's name? El Fleco, Carlos Mendoza, I think. Carmen's eyes widened. That's no small-time dealer. He runs 3 neighborhoods. If Herrera's tied to him, we're not talking about one dirty cop. We're talking about an entire operation. Elena felt a chill run through her. So what does that mean for me? It means you're in deeper than you ever imagined. But it also means if you play it right, you might just, there's a pattern, Elena said firmly. It could mean he's done this before. Exactly, Patterson replied. But we'd need her to testify, and that won't be easy. People who've been through the system rarely want to return. The night before trial, Elena hadn't slept a minute. Tomorrow her fate would rest in the hands of strangers. It was her word against a decorated detective with 2 decades of spotless service. That afternoon, Patterson reviewed her testimony one last time. Elena, tomorrow you need to stay calm and focused. The prosecutor will try to rattle you, make you look confused or dishonest. Don't fall for it, she leaned forward. Did you find out anything about the witnesses against me? Patterson sighed. I spoke with them. Maria Santos swears she saw you exchanging things with men behind the building. Roberto Jimenez says he observed suspicious activity near your car several times. Elena's frustration boiled over. That's impossible. Maria can barely walk, let alone spy out the window all day. And Roberto? His store is a block away. He can't even see my parking spot. Elena, I get it. But have you checked? Have you proven they couldn't see what they claim? He shifted uncomfortably. With my caseload, I haven't had time for that kind of field work. In that moment, Elena realized she was mostly on her own. Patterson meant well, but his resources were limited. This was a conspiracy and she was the target. Then promise me this, she said. When you cross-examine them, press them about their line of sight. Make them explain exactly what they saw and from where, and ask Herrera about the Melissa Torres case. Patterson scribbled notes, skeptical. That's circumstantial at best. Bringing up old cases could backfire. James, we don't have a choice. If there's a pattern, the jury needs to hear it. After he left, Carmen tried to calm her sister. How are you holding up? Terrified, Elena admitted. That's normal. But remember, Herrera thinks he's already won. That arrogance could be his weakness. Overconfident men make mistakes. Watch closely, not just what they say, but how they say it. The truth hides in the details. The next morning, Elena woke before dawn. Her stomach was heavy with dread as she dressed. At the courthouse steps, she caught sight of her sister Rosa, who silently mouthed, I love you. I believe in you. Inside, the courtroom was packed, neighbors, reporters, and in the front row, Detective Herrera, polished and confident. Judge Harrison entered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your duty is to determine whether Elena Vasquez is guilty of possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. Prosecutor Morrison rose first. This is a simple case. On October 15th, Detective Herrera found 3 kilos of cocaine in the defendant's car. 2 witnesses will confirm she was seen in drug-related activities. The defense will claim a conspiracy, that a respected officer fabricated charges to ruin an innocent woman. Ridiculous. The evidence is overwhelming. Then Patterson stood. His voice carried strength. My client, Elena Vasquez, is a hard-working woman with no record. She stands here today because she saw something she shouldn't have, and someone powerful decided to silence her. You'll hear how these so-called witnesses contradict themselves and how the evidence appeared only after she became a threat. At the end of this trial, I'll ask you to find her not guilty, not only because the case against her is built on lies, but because if this could happen to her, it could happen to any of us. Elena noticed Herrera shift slightly in his seat. Subtle, but telling. The prosecution called its first witness, Detective Miguel Herrera. He entered the stand polished, authoritative, a man used to commanding juries. Detective, tell us about the morning of October 15th, Morrison began. At 9:15 a.m., I received an anonymous call reporting suspicious activity at 1247 Maple Street. I arrived and saw 3 men near a blue Honda Civic. They fled as I approached. The passenger window was broken, so I inspected the vehicle. Under the driver's seat, I found 3 packages. Field tests confirmed cocaine, 3 kilos total. Morrison leaned in. In your 20 years of experience, Detective, is that quantity consistent with personal use? Absolutely not. That much cocaine is worth about $300,000. It's meant for distribution. Elena studied the jurors. Some were taking notes, visibly impressed by Herrera's calm authority. When Morrison asked about prior cases, Pat. Morrison. So when you say the substance in your car was cocaine, you were speculating? Elena. The officers told me it was cocaine. Morrison. Isn't it true this story about Herrera is just a desperate lie to escape responsibility? Elena. No, it's the truth. Morrison. Or is it fiction invented after you were caught with 3 kilos of cocaine? Elena's voice rose. Detective Herrera is corrupt and everyone here knows it. Objection, Morrison barked. Sustained, said the judge. Her words were stricken, but the room was buzzing. Morrison smiled smugly. No further questions. Elena sat down, heart pounding. She had told the truth. But would it be enough? Morrison had painted Elena as desperate and unreliable. Patterson did his best in closing arguments, but Elena could already see it in the jury's faces. It wasn't working. The evidence was too strong, and her uncorroborated testimony sounded exactly like Morrison had framed it. A desperate story. Morrison rose for his final words. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the evidence. 3 kilograms of cocaine worth $300,000, found in the defendant's car. Testimony from respected neighbors. A veteran detective. And against all this, a wild claim of police conspiracies that conveniently cannot be verified. The defendant wants you to believe a decorated officer ruined her life because she saw something. If she really had, why didn't she report it right away? Why wait until after her arrest? The verdict must be based on evidence, not stories. And the evidence is clear. Elena Vasquez is guilty. Every word felt like a nail in her coffin. The jury hadn't even left yet, but Elena could see their decision written on their faces. Moments later, during recess, Elena sat in a small conference room with Patterson when a sudden commotion filled the hallway. Footsteps, shouting, doors slamming. Patterson stepped out, returning with disbelief on his face. Elena, federal agents are here, and they're asking for you. Before she could respond, the door opened. 2 men in dark suits and a confident woman in her 40s entered. Miss Vasquez, the woman said. I'm Special Agent Sarah Chin, FBI. We need to talk. Elena froze. Patterson was equally stunned. What is this about? Agent Chin sat across from her. We've been investigating a corruption network in this city for 18 months. Your testimony today confirmed critical information we've been trying to verify. The room seemed to stop spinning. What? Everything you said about Detective Herrera and Carlos Mendoza, El Flaco, was true. We know because we've been watching them for months. One agent flipped open a laptop. Photographs appeared. Herrera accepting an envelope deep in conversation, exactly as Elena had described. These were taken October 12th, the very night you were there. Tears of relief blurred her vision. But you let me stand trial? Agent Chin nodded. We knew you were innocent, but we needed an independent witness to corroborate what our surveillance showed. Your testimony gave us that. Without it, we couldn't risk exposing the investigation. Patterson leaned forward, furious. You use my client as bait? I understand your anger, Mr. Patterson, Chin replied. But this network involves Herrera, several officers, 2 judges, and the district attorney himself. Elena felt her stomach drop. The district attorney, David Morrison. Suddenly it all made sense. The lies, the planted evidence, Morrison's relentless push to convict her. So what happens now? She whispered. Agent Chin finally smiled. Now, Miss Vasquez, you walk free. And in an hour, we arrest 13 people, including Herrera and Morrison. When court reconvened, the air was charged. Federal agents positioned themselves quietly around the room. Herrera looked restless, his eyes darting to the exits. Morrison had gone pale. Judge Harrison entered, but before he could begin, Agent Chin stood. Your Honor, I am Special Agent Sarah Chin of the FBI. I have federal arrest warrants for several individuals present, including members of the prosecution. I also have evidence proving that Elena Vasquez was the victim of a criminal conspiracy. The courtroom froze. Morrison tried to mask his fear. Herrera shifted in his chair. Chin presented it all. Photographs, audio recordings, financial documents linking Morrison to bribes, and testimonies from officers who had turned. The most shocking revelation came last. The boss Herrera referred to wasn't a gangster. It was Judge Sandra Walsh of the County Superior Court. Gasps erupted. Walsh, long praised as a pillar of justice, unmasked as the mastermind of a corruption empire. Chaos followed. Herrera arrested mid-outburst. Morrison caught trying to escape through a back door. Walsh led away in handcuffs. When order was restored, Judge Harrison turned to Elena. Miss Vasquez, the evidence shows you suffered a grave injustice. All charges are dismissed. On behalf of this court, I offer a personal apology. Elena could barely breathe. Epilogue. 6 months later, Elena sat in a federal office signing documents for her compensation. 17 people had been convicted. Herrera and Morrison sentenced to 20 years, Judge Walsh to 25. But Elena's life had changed in more than one way. She was now working as a civilian investigator for the FBI, specializing in judicial corruption. How do you feel? Agent Chin asked. Still surreal, Elena said. 6 months ago, I was facing 20 years in prison. Now I'm helping ensure no one else suffers the same. She thought of Carmen, now free and working in rehab programs. Of Melissa Torres, cleared of her record after testifying. As she left the federal building, Elena paused on the steps. Across the street, the courthouse where she had almost lost her freedom was being renovated, staffed with new judges under federal oversight. Her phone rang. It was her sister Rosa. Elena, how did it go? It's over, Elena said, smiling for the first time in months. I'm ready to start my new job. Driving home in her new car, she reflected on what she had learned. Justice isn't automatic. It requires courage. Power corrupts, but truth always finds a way. And sometimes the most unlikely heroes are just ordinary people who refuse to stay silent. 6 months earlier, Detective Herrera had thought his badge made him untouchable. He hadn't counted on Elena Vasquez. Now Herrera sat in a federal cell. And Elena? She was just beginning her real work. Because in a world where corruption thrives, there will always be a need for people willing to fight for the truth, no matter the cost.